Hey, Hopkins Community Church, coming to you with our second installment of the State of the Church updates that we're going to be doing and we did and are going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. And today we're talking about temporary adjustments. And because we are living in a season of temporary adjustments, given all of the things that are going on with COVID-19 and just the way that we've been worshiping together as a community and all that. I thought it would be at least somewhat interesting for you to see, or at least to come to you from my temporary adjustment. So this is my home office. It comes equipped with a changing table, and you can't see the table that's been sitting on, but that's from the church. And a special thanks to Eileen Kittler. I am borrowing her special chair for church stuff for my time at home because I borrowed a larger size table that needed to be raised up a little bit. So that's my personal temporary adjustment. I don't work well from home, and kids don't understand that I'm working at home. So I'm also coming to you during nap time because it's the only quiet time in our house right now. Anyways, yeah. So just a reminder as we talk for a few minutes here, or as I talk for a few minutes. Reminder: last week we just kind of did an overview of what we're talking about, where we're going, where we are. Just a reminder that our target date currently for resuming in-person indoor worship is September 13, and just a reminder that is a target date, which means that is the day we are hoping to be able to do this. But there are a lot of things in play, and we'll talk about that as we move down the line a little bit, and what our plans are, and we pray that God blesses those plans. So, yeah, we're talking today about temporary adjustments, and so we're talking about the state of the church and things like that. And so I want to take you back to our November meeting, our congregational meeting, where we talked about a search team. And I want you to remember that when we talked about this team, they were going to kind of do three phases of things. There was going to be a sort of mission and vision evaluation, and that involved looking at what we have and looking at, is that still who we are, or do we need to revisit that a little bit? Do we need to re-articulate that a little bit? Do we need to revise that? What do we need to do? So that part is happening right now. We're actually going to be finishing that up next week. Well, in the next couple weeks. And the next part is discernment, looking at where we are as a church and what are our needs. And that's a kind of a big important thing too, because then what we're going to do is evaluate these discerned needs and say what would be some permanent fixes, permanent solutions to these needs. Particularly, we talked about the idea of an associate pastor, or maybe what it would look like to have two part-time people or something like that. Like, I have no idea what this is going to look like yet, and I don't think nobody really has any idea about this yet. The reality is we're working in that direction. It kind of feels like we keep making little fixes that are temporary, and it sort of ends up becoming sort of like a revolving door. We feel like we're chasing our tail a little bit here, and so we're really putting the search team in place with an effort to have a more sustainable fix that is going to be a long-term fix. People that are on board and feeling the vision and the mission of Hopkins Community Church and want to be a part of this community and want to do it long term, and just really feel called to that. So we want whatever is happening in this section here, where we are actually recommending a job description or some job descriptions that we would then actually do a search for, that these people would be people that are here and in for the long haul, that really feel like a more permanent call, a permanent ministry. I mean, I say permanent, right? Because nothing's permanent, but that they actually feel they feel called here, and they are people who would fit the vision and mission of this community and work to propel us forward, so that we don't end up kind of what it feels like where we are again, wondering, okay, so we had somebody for 2 years and now they're gone, and we had somebody for 2 years and now they're gone, and we did an internship and now it just over and over and over again. And so, how can we make that happen? So, a reminder, I say that with a reminder because everything that we're thinking about in the moment is taking the search team into consideration, because really what we want to do is create space for them to do that work in the time that they need to do it, so that the answer is clear, is um, is what we need, and however long that takes is however long that takes. We didn't really want to. I was hoping that like it would happen in 9 months to a year, but if because of the COVID thing or whatever, if it takes a little bit longer, it takes a little bit longer. That's kind of irrelevant. The reality is we want to make sure that they have the time to do it and do it well, but we also don't want to take a step backwards in ministry. And I say we, I mean the consistory. This is one thing we've talked about. As Evan has transitioned out of his role as ministry resident and as a worship leader, we find ourselves in a bit of a hole. And what that looks like is we are in need of somebody who's leading worship, but we're also coming up against our discipleship season. And for us, that means uh, the potential, at least our target, Sunday school, walkout worship, uh, GEMS, cadets, youth group, middle school and high school youth group, and small groups. That all of those things kind of kick off at the same time. And all of those things uh, take a level of planning, take a level of sort of, say, I don't want to say oversight, but yes, oversight. Um, there's a lot of leadership involved in there, volunteers that we really need to do good at resourcing and developing. And small groups takes a lot of planning and a lot of preparation. Um, and 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 so uh, the simple reality is that for us as a consistory, and for me in particular, um, it's just it's a lot. It's too much, really. I can't do it all, and I don't want to sacrifice family time for it, because this community has asked me to lead by example, and I feel so strongly that um, that my primary calling is to my wife and my kids, and so um, where I totally understand the need to work overtime, and sometimes that's just how it works, and I don't this isn't, don't hear me criticizing anyone for that, because I've been there and I know that. And there are weeks, it just, you're right, it depends. Ministry is kind of like that. And so I feel like I'm backpedaling all of a sudden, but the reality is that um, we want to continue to move forward in ministry, and we want to continue to do the things that we're doing, and raise the bar again and do more, because we want to move forward. We want to have that forward momentum. um, and so for us to do that, uh, we have to make some temporary adjustments, recognizing that they're temporary, because the search team is working, and we believe that God is going to guide them to the right answers, the right long-term solutions, to drive ministry forward for Hopkins Community Church in the Hopkins community. Um, but we need to make some temporary adjustments now to continue doing what we're doing until we get there. And I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. Uh, and sometimes I'm not necessarily sure that the things that are in my head make sense elsewhere. However, that's really what we've been talking about, is these temporary adjustments. And so again, with Evan transitioning out, what you may have noticed is that I have taken over the worship leading role again. That kind of happened. It happened when Jan Lodenstein transitioned out, uh, and and I, in my past life, right before Before I was a pastor, whatever, I was a worship leader, and so worship is near and dear to my heart, and so that is it's something that I can take on, and I'm happy to take on for a temporary amount of time, um, but it takes time, and so with that kind of leaves the idea of discipleship, adult discipleship, youth discipleship, all of our discipleship in the upcoming discipleship season out there, is to say my pastoral job takes time, and worship leading takes time, and discipleship, like it all takes time. And so what we have decided as a consistory, what the consistory has decided to do, is temporarily for this discipleship season ask Jim Harrison if he would be willing to take on the leadership of small groups and also do leadership development with our ministry team, with our ministry leaders. And so to be that resource for them and to be the coordinator of small groups. Now, this is kind of a big deal because this is exactly what Jim did in the mission field. Jim developed cell churches. Jim worked within small group settings. Like that was what Jim did. And so he is eminently qualified for this. In talking with him, he's very, very passionate about it, and really is excited to see a ministry like this flourish at Hopkins Community Church. And so, in addition to developing a prayer team and doing that work, which we originally brought him on board to do, which is that 2-year contract. You maybe remember that, but that's it. That's what that is. We are additionally asking him to do this work with small groups and leadership development, and so that we can continue to move forward as a church and as a ministry, instead of having to pull back the reins and say, well, let's just wait a year, because that never goes well. And once you lose momentum, it takes a lot of energy to get it back again. And so right now is the time for bold action and bold moves. So the consistory is working with Jim right now around that and what that looks like. And Jim is already kind of hitting the ground running as far as looking at our rooted curriculum and looking at small groups and our leaders and starting to have those conversations about what is this going to look like in the fall and getting us prepped, because that's July 30 and we're talking about September 13 as a potential target launch day. That's not that far away. I mean, we're talking less than 45 days at this point. And we got to prepare, and Jim understands that. I understand that. I think the consistory understands that too, and we want to move forward. So that's what is happening as far as temporary adjustments. There are a lot of unknowns, a lot of questions about, okay, so what does reopening look like? And we'll talk about that in some a couple weeks from now. We don't have all the answers. What happens if the schools are closed because of the phase that we're in Michigan and so on and so forth. I'd like to think that doesn't happen, but we don't know. And so what does that look like for small groups? I don't know. What does that look like for Sunday school or nursery or youth group and whatever? We just don't know the answer to that question yet. And it's going to take some more discernment and some more time to really get the answers and for those questions and have a plan in place. And I know that's probably right. We all want to know exactly what's going to happen, and we just don't know. But I want to continue. I want to continue to invite you into a time of prayer for discernment, that God would reveal to us exactly the ways that we can do this, exactly the ways that make sense for this community. I've heard from. I am very thankful for the input that people have already given. I know there's a lot of churches that have reopened and have been reopened since April and May and June and whatever. I thank you for those feedback, and I am in particular talking with some of those pastors and getting feedback from those churches about what has worked and what hasn't worked, and what they're doing. What are they doing for nursery? Are they even doing nursery? What are they doing for their all these things, and so um, we will have a plan in place. It's not ready yet, but we'll get there. And so again, I just ask you to continue to pray for discernment for the leadership. Ask you to pray that God would guide us in the right ways to go for ministry here in Hopkins. I don't think that this is a time for us to pull back and say, let's just wait and let COVID be our excuse. I think this is the time in an uncertain moment in most people's lives where we as a church need to step forward in boldness, in faith, recognizing that there is no better time to communicate the love of Jesus Christ and the hope that we have in him, the hope that extends far beyond even this life and all of the uncertainties of it, and extends into eternity. And that is what we're called to be about. That is what we're called to communicate. That is what we're called to live out in our lives. And what better time for us as a church to say, let's move forward. Let's communicate the gospel. Let's show God's love. Let's reach out now while people are struggling. Let's reach out instead of shrink back. The kingdom is advancing. I think the fields, I said this before, I will continue to say this, the fields are more ripe than they've ever been for people to hear the message of Jesus Christ. And the time is getting shorter every day. And we want to see people's lives changed. So that's what I got for you as far as some temporary adjustments. There might be some conversations later about a worship leader, a temporary worship leader. I don't know if that's going to happen. Would that happen, and so on and so forth. Those are conversations for a little bit later. But again, this is all temporary as we are just kind of trying to move forward while also creating space for the search team to complete its mandate and its work. So next week for this installment of the State of the Church, we're going to talk about our faith statement, and we're going to talk about the denomination's Vision 2020 process. It's going to be thrilling. I'm sorry, I can't say that with a straight face. I think that our faith statement, our belief statement, I think is really great, and I'm excited to walk through that with y'all and encourage you to walk through that as well. And then we're going to talk about where the denomination is in its process of discernment around some of the issues, some of the conversations and conflicts that have been present in the denomination too. So. I'll release more information, or we'll talk more about that then. And then in a couple of weeks, you're going to hear from the search team as they complete most of the first part of their mandate. They're going to come back and present to the church what they are feeling, what they have discerned to be sort of mission, vision, framework, foundational stuff for us as a church as we move forward in this decade. And then we'll talk about reopening, and we'll talk about future ministry and all that in coming weeks. So I thank you for your prayers. I thank you for your responses. I thank you for your words of encouragement. I would ask and encourage you to not keep those just to me, but that you would encourage your elder and your deacon, or elders and deacons, that you would send encouragement to Jim as well, and Kathy, and just continue to keep us all in prayer as we navigate this movement forward, and just continued ministry and growth here at Hopkins Community Church. So it's never been a more interesting time to serve, and it is truly an honor and a privilege to serve this community. And I thank you. I thank you for that opportunity, and I thank you for just the ways that you continue to bless me and continue to bless my family. Um, we love it here, and we're so thankful to be a part of Hopkins Community Church. I hope you have a wonderful day, a blessed week, and we will see you Sunday.